Basically, the government in the UK is bringing through laws to make sure everybody's safe online. I don't know, I feel pretty safe online already.
I click the button, I don't get stabbed.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's an attempt to control Web 2.0. I'm old enough to remember before there was internet. You probably can't remember before internet. There used to be a thing called no internet, but everybody just called it nothing because there wasn't the internet, so you couldn't. But anyway,
It's called book.
it was, there's books, there's TV, like videos and stuff. Then the internet came along, and it was static web pages and email, and then it became sort of dynamically driven and user generated, so user to user. So when you're on Twitter, or Facebook, or YouTube, or whatever, users are generating content. Other users are seeing it, and also you can comment and users can read it. So there's this whole new web where the web has to protect you from harm and offense, according to the government. So this is going to cover everything. It's not like Twitter can kick somebody off for being offensive, but then you can go and Getter or you can go on something else. This is going to affect everything. So it's not just YouTube. It's going to affect Odyssey and Rumble, every part of the web. So right now at this moment we might be at peak internet, and it's about to get severely restricted in a
This is peak.
in a Chinese government style. So they're going to remove net neutrality. So when you search for things, you're not going to get you're going to get weighted results depending on what the government has deemed is the truth. There's going to be an end to user freedom in private messaging. So on WhatsApp, that's not going to be private anymore. So this is pretty far-reaching stuff. What they've tried to do is make it so boring that you can't be bothered finding out about it. So I'm going to rattle through it. So the key points the bill covers. So it introduces new rules for firms which host user-generated content, so Facebook and Twitter and all the rest of it. And they're also focused on minimizing the presentation of harmful search results to users. We're going to talk about harm at the end because harm, a lot of things in this bill are very vaguely defined. But basically, any search result that's deemed harmful is going to be delisted or suppressed. And you can't even use a different search engine because it's going to affect all search engines. And who decides? How is it compared? How do they decide something's harmful? It says something's harmful if it's physically harmful or psychologically harmful or financially harmful. But man, psychologically harmful. How do you define so an image of image of fighting, video game footage? Lots of stuff could be decided to be.
We know how it's going to end up being used, which is it's politically incorrect, therefore it's psychologically harmful to this group that we've privileged.
Exactly, this safetyism that's coming in. It's like, oh, I feel unsafe. I need a safe space. Your words make me feel unsafe.
You need a privileged position. Is what you're arguing for.
Yeah. So platforms which fail to protect people will need to answer to the regulator and could face fines of up to 10% of their revenues or being blocked from the internet. So 10% of revenues, that's not profit, that's revenue. So, bear in mind, a lot of tech companies operate on quite thin. There's a lot of revenue, but thin margins. So this could make, this basically gives the government the power to shut down any internet business that doesn't toe the line. Platforms likely to be accessed by children, which is all of them, because any child can access the internet, will also have a duty to protect young people from using their services from legal but harmful material, such as self-harm or eating disorder content.
So it's Tumblr gone.
Yeah. Thank
Selling
God.
it already.
And Section 187 in the original bill says psychological and physical harm, but there's no objective, meaningful definition. Additionally, providers who publish or place pornographic content on their services will be required to prevent children from accessing that content. Presumably, unless it's part of the school curriculum. And you're a gender-queer school teacher who wants to talk about their last date. But the largest, highest-risk platforms will have to address named categories of legal but harmful material accessed by adults, likely to include issues such as abuse, harassment, or exposure to content encouraging self-harm or eating disorders. They will need to make clear in their terms and conditions what is and is not acceptable on their site and enforce this. So there's going to be clear terms and conditions, and seeing how it's enforced. So at least there's going to be, at the moment, Twitter is quite opaque about the rules and how they're enforced. So this is a potentially positive thing. You'll be able to see what the rules are and how they're enforced. But they're not explicitly clear in this. They say freedom of expression will be protected because these laws are not about imposing excessive regulation or state removal of content, but ensuring that companies have the systems and processes in place to ensure users' safety.
Well, that's obvious BS.
This is, it's gaslighting us by saying we're going to keep freedom of expression, but they definitely don't. And they say proportionate measures will avoid unnecessary burdens in small and low-risk businesses, but they don't define this. Nothing in this law is defined, which is what legislation should be very specific. So there's going to be huge administrative burdens on any search engine, any business with user-generated content. So not just social media, but anything that allows users to post reviews, Pornhub comments, basically any web company. It's like Minority Report. So the companies have to do a predictive audit of potential harm and create the terms and conditions, which is going to have a huge legal and administrative cost. I mean, lawyers that I know are already working out how they can make money from this. This is another, like DSARs or FOI requests. This is another bit of government legislation that lawyers are going to make a lot of money from. They're not clear on how smaller companies will be protected, and companies will then have to constantly monitor, flag, prioritize, and take action on problematic content that they host. And some of this can be automated, but there's going to be a huge cost. There's going to be a lot of human involvement and legal involvement in this. And big companies, ironically, a lot of big tech companies will like it because it actually increases the barrier to entry. So if you're a tech startup, you're going to need a lot more money to pay for all this. It's an added, burden of red tape. And it also increases the power of big tech companies to moderate and regulate their content and delete it. So instead of reducing their political influence, it'll actually increase the political influence of, Twitter or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. Ofcom are going to be responsible for it, which is going to place a huge burden on the public purse as well. And finally, the largest platforms will need to put in place proportionate systems and processes to prevent fraudulent adverts being published or hosted on their services. This will tackle the harmful scam advertisements, which can have a devastating effect on their victims. I'd have thought a better way to do this would be to educate people around scam adverts.
Yeah, plus there are already rules for deleting them, so I don't know what's different.
Yeah, exactly. Like, financial fraud, that kind of thing, theft is already illegal. So, by the way, so Sam Hain, the guy who helps me research this, he pointed out that online scams, because when you get online scams, that say like, oh, your PayPal account has been hacked, and it's always it's obviously a scam. Like, everything's wrong. They've got words spelt wrong. The logo's like, all jaggy and not
the email address ends in .ru.
Yeah. So why they're all so obvious. Because they're making huge amounts of money. They could afford to make them better. But they make them deliberately obvious so they only get the idiots. Because if you rope in...
Oh, right, yeah.
If you rope in smart people with those things, then the smart people are going to...
There might be consequences.
Well, they'll twig later on, when you've got them on the phone or whatever, they'll twig that it's a scam. And also, there's going to be consequences. Moving on, what the bill means for users. Platforms likely to be accessed by children will need to prevent access to material that is harmful for children, such as pornography. I'd have thought this, stuff like this, controlling the access to the internet is a parent's responsibility. There's tools to do it. I don't want the government being responsible for what my child sees on the internet.
Everyone already offers this, which is, here's the parental filter.
And they're going to ensure that there's strong protections from activity which is harmful to children, which we expect will include harms such as bullying. And again, this is so open to interpretation.
Are they going to bring back the wanking pass? Do you remember that?
No.
Theresa May proposed the wank pass.
What's the wank pass? Did you call it the wank pass?
No, everyone else did. So you and me, if we wanted to go on Pornhub, we would have to go down to the local newsagents, get some wanking tickets for £1 each, and it would have a code on it. We'd show them our ID to get it, and then you could punch in the code like a Steam code, and it would give you access.
This is a genuine thing.
That was something they honestly proposed.
And this wasn't in the Victorian era. This was some that...
Theresa May.
That is insane.
Yeah, it was because they were like, well, how do we stop kids looking at porn? Well, wanking pass. And I was just like...
That is,
useless. Absolutely useless.
I mean, it's not too different from this. So basically this... these changes mean that you're going to have to register. There's going to be no more anonymous browsing of Pornhub. So you'll have
It'll
to
be
prove,
logged and
it'll all be logged. They'll have your
campaign.
They'll have a picture of your driver's license. I mean, can't imagine there's going to be any problem with some dodgy Russian porn site having a picture of my driver's license.
No, but just someone runs for office and all of a sudden all of their Pornhub search gets leaked. Yeah, I mean, too bad. We can see what Nigel Farage has been looking at.
Yeah. So adults they're saying adults will have more control over who they interact with online and the types of harmful content that they see. So you can choose not to be presented with certain types of content. I mean, this is sort of, I guess, moving on from the personalized internet that we already get. You know, when I open Google News, I get, you know, basically stories about gerbils and tanks, Russian tanks getting blown up, because that's what I like looking at. They say we are not requiring companies to remove legal content, but they are. So that's an out
legal but harmful.
Yeah, legal but harmful.
That's legal.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So moving on all the way down to who oversees and enforces the framework. So Ofcom are going to be responsible. We're going to have a huge expansion of power for Ofcom. Looking at the last paragraph there, they'll be able to bring criminal sanctions against senior managers who fail to ensure their company complies with Ofcom's information requests or who deliberately destroy or withhold information should companies fail to take the new rules seriously. So this will make everybody incredibly risk averse. It's not just the company that could be responsible, but, you know, managers in the company, executives in the company.
This is why no tech company wants to build themselves in the UK. I mean, I know BitChute, for example, wonderful British company, massively great on free speech. They're just like, nope, this is what's free, to hell with you. They don't censor stuff because people don't like it. And they've had to move, and they're looking at moving all over the place to try and get away from this kind of crap. I mean, if you want to destroy British industry, I mean, stuff like this is perfect for it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it churns up constitutional matters regarding, you know, a legal but harmful thing, such as pornography. So under the wording, anything that causes physical or psychological damage, you know, is self-harming physical damage into the realms of criminal law. So, you know, civil law is the balance of probabilities. Criminal is beyond reasonable doubt. But here we've got a blurring and a sort of move between the two. And moving on to the next bit, how the new laws tackle misinformation and disinformation. So in America, we've got the Disinformation Governance Board, sort of Orwellian Ministry of Truth. I'm sure you covered it on Lotus Eaters.
I've seen about it, yeah. It's mad.
And it's run by a nutcase. So if we open this link, she worked with, so Nina Jankovic, she worked with StopFake previously, which whitewashed Eastern European neo-Nazi groups that committed war crimes. So, I mean, this was with the purpose of combating Russian propaganda.
Okay. But I just, the fact checkers have come to tell us that the neo-Nazi war crimes didn't happen.
Yeah, that is literally what they've done.
I mean, know that Joe Biden's new advisor is just like, yeah, the Holocaust didn't happen. What? Fuck, what?
I mean, yeah, not a million miles off the mark. I mean, personally, I agree with it but I'm very pro Ukrainian neo-Nazi group. Yeah, I think it's great that the left are finally getting behind ultra-nationalist armed militants. You know,
finally, a right-wing movement Leo can get behind.
And also, it's combating Russian propaganda, which I consider semi-communist. So yeah, I mean, no, genuinely, it's great to see. It's great to see the mainstream left and the fringe left supporting neo-Nazis. And if we move on to the next one,
I could have loaded up that link later. That's mad.
So she tried to render. If you scroll down and look at this picture. So she's sticking up for this neo-Nazi group.
So these are humble citizens out to, I don't know, build a road, maybe build a log cabin. That's what all the axes are for.
I mean, come on. Like, I consider myself right-wing, but even I'm like, whoa.
It's cold out. They need those balaclavas. That's how you know they're the good guys.
Pickaxe handles and all the rest of it. It's like, you know, these, even the US, so this is a Ukrainian neo-Nazi far-right group called C14, and they've done pogroms. They've done pogroms against Roma people. These are not good people. They've been doing horrific stuff. So really brutalizing the Roma community and doing all kinds of stuff. Even the US State Department classifies C14 as a nationalist hate group,
but not the US Disinformation Unit.
Not Nina Jankovic. She thinks they're great, and she's published stuff trying to sort of whitewash what they've done.
She's even got one of their axes.
yeah. So under the online online safety bill, the duty of care will require platforms to have robust and proportionate measures to deal with harms that could cause significant physical or psychological harm to children, such as misinformation and disinformation about vaccines. Now, there needs to be a discussion about vaccines. There's
I don't
stuff.
think we're allowed one.
This
is going on YouTube. We're not allowed. I don't really think.
Oh yeah, no, we're actually I mean, we're not allowed to discuss it, but we should be able to discuss it. And there's evidence coming out that we're not going to talk about
that doesn't exist. But
that doesn't exist.
I
So leaving that topic about. I mean, you know when something's got an element of truth when you're not allowed to question it.
Yes.
That's when, you know what I mean? That's why the trans ideology, collapses. Critical race theory collapses. You're not allowed to question them.
Those humble basket weavers are just out basket weaving.
Yeah, like you're not allowed to question, the Taliban. Like the ideology they're based on doesn't stand up to scrutiny, I'm afraid. So the regulatory framework will also include additional measures to address disinformation, including provisions to boost audience resilience through empowering users with the critical thinking skills they need to spot online falsehoods, giving Ofcom the tools it needs to understand how effectively false information is being addressed through transparency reports and supporting research on misinformation and disinformation. So this is the phraseology of indoctrination. They're saying the truth isn't divined through discussions and rational logical debate and the presentation of evidence, support and arguments.
No, it comes from the government.
Yeah, instead the Ministry of Truth, so Ofcom in this country, the Disinformation Department in America, they know the absolute truth. They've already worked it out in their little board meeting.
They know the neo-Nazis are the good guys.
So the neo-Nazis. They know the absolute truth, and they'll tell you what it is by suppressing anything that goes against it and promoting anything they want. And where does this leave things like online horoscopes? They're not truth, but they're fun. Mukbangers. Is that self-harming? Dangerous sports. When you see the guys in the wingsuits going down and it's fun to watch. It's encouraging people to jump off buildings with a curtain on the back. Religion. Religion doesn't stand up to a lot of scrutiny. So that would clash with other legislation that protects freedom of religion.
To Islam, self-harm.
Even works of fiction. James Bond, reading a James Bond book. Opinion pieces, playing devil's advocate. A comedy roast. When you're abusing somebody, but it's for fun. Any comedy, anything. Comedy entertains. It tries out ideas. You're not allowed to be doing that. And coming on to the comedy thing, so Nadine Dorries has explicitly said that this law will be used against comedy. So the next
Islam is not self-harm.
The next link.
Not reading that one, John.
So Nadine Dorries says this new legislation, she's specifically referring to this legislation. I don't know if you remember a couple of months ago.
Yeah, there was high hopes for her because she was kind of based, and then she got the position of culture minister, and we were like, okay, this could be fun. And she's been nothing but disappointing.
She changes her mind on things she just flip-flops on things and just reacts with the most sort of knee-jerk thing. So, after saying they were going to, make sure there's free speech online and people aren't silenced, she then turns around and says, so Jimmy Carr does a joke, which is very popular with C-14 in Ukraine, but he does this joke about gypsies, and she turns around and says, well, this new legislation, because obviously there's a lot of public outrage.
Yeah, he deserves prison.
This new legislation they're bringing out, we can take action against him, take action against Netflix. So
it's so obviously transparent because she got a lot of S for supporting Boris Johnson, talking about letterboxes.
Yeah.
And, okay.
Well, I'm not touching that one. Man, last time I mentioned the Boris Johnson and L-box thing, I got so many death threats you wouldn't believe.
That's legal,
it's
but
enough to make you want to move to
speech.
Texas.
So the fact that Boris Johnson made that, he should also be caught up in this. It's so transparent that they just don't care.
Yeah.
Happy to destroy your lives if it doesn't touch them.
And people don't understand, like, the Democrats who set up this disinformation board, they're like, oh, now we can decide what's true and what's allowed online. What happens when Trump gets back in? Then he's got this disinformation board that he runs. Do you think he's going to be saying all the same things?
I hope he just... No, they deserve it. I don't even care anymore. they honestly deserve being told just everything Trump says is the gospel truth.
And moving back to the online thing. This is the summary, by the way. The full bill is like over 200 pages long. Oh my God! So I'm not going through all of it, but they say they're going to safeguard freedom of expression and pluralism and protect people's rights to participate in society and engage in robust debate online, but not if it's deemed harmful. So anything that's insulting. If somebody feels unsafe because you've criticised their, picked a hole in their argument, that's going to be gone. And bear in mind, these are going to be very risk-averse moderators who'll just pull stuff down.
I mean, well, think of Twitter for a minute. Like Owen Jones blocks anyone who disagrees with him.
Yeah.
So his interpretation of unsafe is anyone who disagrees with him.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I block people all the time just because, I can't be bothered. Sometimes I block them for no reason, just for fun.
You agreed with me. Blocked.
Block me. It's like, well, deal with it, you fanny.
Block your own mother just for...
And both Ofcom and in-scope companies will have duties relating to freedom of expression. They'll have a legal obligation to regard the importance of freedom of expression when fulfilling their duties, for which they can be held to account. But they've got legal obligations in both directions then. They've got a legal obligation to freedom of expression, but also a legal obligation to prevent psychological harm coming to anybody. So, it doesn't sound workable. It doesn't sound objective. And the largest social media platforms will no longer be able to arbitrarily remove harmful content. They will need to be clear about what content is acceptable in their services and enforce these rules consistently. That actually sounds like a good idea. It's like one of the few bits in this bill that is a good idea. They will also need to put into place additional protections for democratic and journalistic content. So we'll get onto that in a moment. I'm worried I'm running over in this.
We may have to jump over a bunch.
Yeah, all right. So private messaging, basically private messaging, WhatsApp, encrypted messages that you can consider to be private. They're not going to be private anymore. So if you call your mate a dick and your algorithm picks up that it's potentially damaging. So they're saying it's going to be like there's going to be automatic algorithms monitoring private messages, which is going to mean that you're still private, but it's not, because if you call your mate a dick, the algorithm picks it up as like psychological harm type abuse. Then
I don't know about you, but I'm going to jail.
Those messages, yeah, totally. And none of it will affect real criminals. The terrorists will find a way around it by using VPNs or shared documents or emails or something. The people affected will just be regular people. So skipping down to what it says about safeguards for journalism. So this is it says all news publishers' content will be exempt, not just their journalistic content. The exemption applies when the content is posted by the publisher and also when it is posted by a different user, as long as the user reproduces or links the original content in full. So this is interesting. They're saying news content is going to be fine. So you can publish pictures of war or whatever that could be psychologically harmful to someone.
All my opinions from now on are news.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing. Who is a journalist? How do you define a journalist? You can't even define a woman. How are you going to define a journalist? So Lotus Eaters and Andy Ngo break stories that aren't covered anywhere else, but Antifa don't think Andy Ngo's a journalist, and the system considers him a far-right activist. Romy Tomlinson also turns a spotlight on stories swept under the carpet or minimised by mainstream press. Some people would consider him a journalist.
He calls
some people,
himself one.
Yeah,
So
some people don't. Avi Yenemy from Rebel News covers authoritarianism in Australia and Canada, but those governments that he covers don't recognise him as a journalist. I mean, it's important for the government can't be deciding if the person revealing truths about the government is a journalist. It's like there's an obvious conflict of interest there. It's ridiculous. And news stories are inherently psychologically damaging. If I post a video of someone getting beaten up, that's going to cause distress, but it's valid reportage. But Ofcom get to decide. Like in Russia, how Putin's administration get to decide that Navalny, his revelations aren't journalism. And, now journalism isn't done just by the Daily Telegraph or the Guardian. People are just becoming journalists themselves. Look at Meyer Tusi or Lotus Eaters. People start doing it and revealing truth. So the distinction between journalist and public isn't well defined. And yeah, I mean, I'm just going to wrap up very, very quickly here on the pornography. So yeah, you're basically gonna have to sign in anytime.
So we are getting the wank license.
You're not getting the wank ticket, but it seems so unnecessary. I already have to click that I'm over 18. I mean, what could be more rigorous than clicking I am over 18?
I don't know. Who would hit yes if they weren't? I mean, it's...
Yeah, and also certain types of porn will be banned. A lot of porn could be seen as promoting physical harm, BDSM stuff, or domestic violence. Women getting slapped in the face, choked, spat in the face.
I find this weird thing. Stuff. Occasionally you run into a feminist who's like, yeah, that's promoting violence. It's like, but they all consented.
Yeah, and they're making a lot more money than the men.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also a lot of women enjoy watching the porn. So basically it means certain content is going to be unavailable. I'll just I don't have time I don't have time for all that. I'll just say that the most worrying things for me is the removal of anonymity, which could actually increase doxing and substantive harassment. The risk of criminal prosecution for staff as well as companies, and huge fines will make tech companies risk averse and more likely to censor valid content. Increases government power and also big tech power as well. Could be combined with other authoritarian legislation such as the hate crime bill to prosecute people who've, for example, made a joke in a private chat. Instead of protecting journalism and democracy, it's providing a mechanism to discredit and silence any journalist who investigates something that the powers that be don't want investigated, which is exactly what journalists should be doing.
Or the porn they don't like.
Yeah. It's going to undermine trust in the government and the internet. There'll be mission creep, particularly as it's so badly worded. Comedy is going to be absolutely ruined by it. Anything will be prosecutable.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Epoch series, The Bodas, this one on the Strategicon of Maurice. And if you'd like to see more, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com. Thank you and goodbye.